Alright, so in this video I'm going to be going over how to actually set up and play a scenario in this module. Again, it's called Gloomhaven Fantasy Setup for Tabletop Simulator. This is version 2.0, and I'm just going to be going over how to set things up, assuming you've already got your characters ready to go, assuming you've already done city and road events, assuming you have all your items in order, etc., etc. We are just going to be going through how the scenario setup process works, and we're going to play through a round just to give you an overview of how it all comes together. So first things first, you want to add a play area. If you have not done so already, you can do that by clicking the Add Play Area button. That brings this interface up, where you have spots for adding and subtracting health and XP, creating and consuming elements. These are the slots where your played cards go for all 4 players, depending upon how many players you have. The left slot is the leading card, and the right slot is for the other one. You can add your elemental infusion board by clicking that button, and you can also grab the monster attack modifier deck and all of the status tokens, as well as a few other tokens for money, scenario aid, objectives, and summon markers, which is a new thing we'll talk about a little bit later, are here. So before you actually start the scenario, you want to go back over here and make sure that you have things set appropriately. I'm actually going to have both characters level 1 here just to show what it would be like for somebody starting a completely new game with level 1 characters. As I mentioned in my other video, this automatically figures out the average party level and tells you the scenario level for normal, hard, very hard, easy. I'm just going to keep things at normal, which puts things at scenario level 1. This is very important. This piece of data is what gets utilized in the game setup that we're going to be looking at right now. So if I move up here to the game setup menu, I can select the scenario number that I want to pick. In this case, I'm just going to do scenario 1, the Black Barrow. You can tell it to use hidden rooms or revealed rooms. Hidden rooms will just show you the first room of the scenario, whereas revealed rooms will show all of them. I typically keep it on hidden. That's just the way I like to play. Standee mode is the more traditional style for playing the game, where all the monsters are represented by standees, whereas hex mode will represent monsters as hexes, which is a more two-dimensional feel. I can then hit create map, and everything pops into place. By the way, I should mention that if you picked the wrong one or you screwed something up before you get started for some reason, you can go in here and you can select delete map to delete all the stuff that's in here. And under monster setup, you can delete the monsters, which will delete all of the monster stat cards and abilities that are here as well. This is also the page, by the way, that you use for setting up for spawning monsters manually, which includes summons. You keep the level consistent, you pick the monster you want to add, you specify if it's a standee or a horizontal or vertical hex alignment, which we'll talk more about in just a sec, and whether or not it's an elite monster, and you can spawn it here. I always do that, hit escape by accident. So before you actually get started, one other thing you want to double check is that the hex alignment is correct for the scenario you're playing. So you can see here that this particular scenario uses horizontal hexes, but if I go into options and then grid, you see that you have the option to switch between horizontal hexes and vertical hexes. And you want to make sure that matches the orientation of the scenario that you're playing. If you need to, you can click show lines and dial up the opacity and actually see what the hexes look like based on this setting. And you can see that you can switch it back and forth. So you can see that we have our bandit guards. Their stat sheet and their ability deck is here automatically. We can see that all of their standees are here appropriately. There's a button to open the door when we want to open it, and all of our starting hexes are here as well. So let's take our character figures, our minis, if you will, and we'll put them, I'm just going to sort of randomly do things here. We'll put them there. And to get things started, we're going to open up our battle interface. And because I'm playing in solo mode, i.e. I'm playing by myself with 2 characters, I'm going to turn that on. And that lets me draw attack modifiers for both characters. Otherwise, each player has their own version of this on their own screen. So I'm just going to grab 2 semi-random cards, and again, in the left slot here is my leading card, and in the right slot is the other card that I want to add. And you want to make sure they're face down, even if you're playing by yourself. Let's actually not do that one. Let's do that guy. Let's get something fast. You want to put them face down just to make sure all the initiative tracking and card revealing works properly. So when all the characters have their 2 cards placed, you click Start Round. It flips those cards. It also flips the monster ability for the round. And most importantly, we get our initiative up here. So in this case, our Scoundrel's going first, then the Bandit Guards, then our Brute. And a new feature they've added, if you click on this little button here, is you can see the base stats for the monsters, as well as the actions they are going to take for this round. So you don't even have to actually go over and look at these cards if you don't want to. Although I've heard that not all of the information as it stands today is 100% accurate here, so you may want to double check just to be safe. So let's go ahead and have our Scoundrel do some work here. So we're going to have him, let's see, let's actually pretend that he was up here to start. So we're going to have him move up 2, do a generic move of 2 with the bottom half of this card, and we'll discard it. And you can see that automatically ends up in my discard pile down here. And we will have him then move on up. And we'll have him attack this guy for 3 with poison. And we can do that by going here and clicking on the draw attack modifier for player 2. And there we go. It's a -1, so that attack for 3 becomes 2, and we can go and mark 2 damage on our bandit. He's also going to get poisoned, and that's where these nifty status tokens come into play. And we can drag and drop that on top of that guy, and you can see that status token appears above its head, and you can clear it by clicking on it. When a player or monster has finished their turn, you can mark them as done by clicking on them in the initiative tracker, and it will turn red. We also want to discard this card. Also, our Scoundrel got 1 XP for that, so we can click on this button to add 1 XP, and you can see that that is noted down here in his XP, her XP tracker. Next up are our Bandit Guards, and I'm just going to have one of them go just for the sake of keeping this brief. So we'll have this guy that we just poisoned go, or actually I guess it should be the elite, since he is an elite. Elites always go first. So the elite is going to shield 1, then attack for 3, and he's going to poison our Scoundrel right back. So we draw an attack modifier for monsters using this deck here, and it's a +1, unfortunately. So that means our Scoundrel takes 4 damage, and there's 2 different ways. Actually, there's a bunch of different ways we can mark that. We could just hit the minus button right here. We could also go over here for player 2 and remove HP 4 times. And regardless of how we do it, you can see the other things are updated, so that's now set to 4. Let me get closer there so you can see it. It's set on 4. And also if we go down here, it is set appropriately as well. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to play out the other bandits. We'll go to the brute, who will do an attack of 3 at range 3, which means he needs to move up at least 1, and he'll attack this guy. So we'll discard that. We'll discard that. He gets an XP as well, and that attack of 3 is a 2 because of the -1. So we'll mark that guy down 2. We'll mark his initiative complete. And when our round is over, we click end round. Boom. So that's a round in this mod. So let's go over a few other things just to show you how things can change over time and go over a few other features. So let's say that we kill this guy. When a monster is dead, you can click on the defeat button and they automatically drop a coin. Awesome. But let's say that that monster was a summon. As we know, summons in Gloomhaven do not drop coins. So this is something that is really easy to lose track of in the physical copy of Gloomhaven, I find. So I really appreciate this feature. You can grab this summon marker, drag it over a monster, and it will designate them as a summon. And when you defeat a summon in the same way, it does not drop a coin. So I really like that feature. For infusions, you can of course manually move the infusion tokens across as you do in the physical copy of the game. You can also, however, use the create element buttons or consume element buttons to move them back and forth. And what's really great is that as rounds start and end, let's add some more cards here just so I can show you. We'll start the round and then we will end the round. It automatically moves elements to the appropriate column, so you don't have to keep track of that stuff, which again is something that's really easy to forget to do in the physical copy of Gloomhaven. Speaking of which, one thing to mention about the status tokens, I should have mentioned this earlier, is that the status tokens do not auto-expire. So you need to make sure that you clear those when you are done by clicking on them above the head of the appropriate mini or standee. Some things that do also automatically happen between rounds when you click the end round button. If there is a monster ability that has the shuffle icon on it, or there was a crit or a null that was drawn in any attack modifier deck, those decks get automatically shuffled when you click end round. So you also don't have to remember to do that shuffling usually. So that's nice as well. I'm going to build out the rooms now for the rest of the scenario, so stop watching now if you are concerned about seeing what the end of scenario 1 looks like. But I think it's important to go over a few things here. When I click open, the room is revealed, the monsters are placed, the door gets flipped over. And I'm going to do the same thing with the final room here in scenario 1, just so I can show you how treasure works. So treasure tokens in this mod, if you click on them, it will automatically spawn from the treasure index deck that lives in the big Gloomhaven box. It will spawn it over here for you. And even then, it doesn't automatically show you what that treasure is. You would have to right click on it, go to state, and select 2 to see what is actually in that treasure. And if you're like me, you like to take stuff that gets removed from the game and put it off to the side. If you want to take a long rest at any point during a scenario, you can do that very easily by just pressing the long rest button. So if I press this here, you can see it says Brute takes a long rest, and if I then play some cards for my Scoundrel and start the round, you can see that the Brute has an initiative of 99 automatically for his long rest. Some other things to mention, there are certain things that do not happen automatically at the end of a scenario. So if you have Bless and Curse cards that have been added to attack modifier decks, make sure you are removing those from those decks at the end of the scenario. It sucks to accidentally keep that stuff in there between scenarios. You can also, if you need them, if you go in here to the big Gloomhaven box and click search, you can grab the map tiles and overlays bag that is here, and you can click place. And that puts things like map tiles, difficult terrain, corridors, traps, obstacles, doors, hazardous terrain, treasure chests. This is all stuff you would need if you were building out a scenario manually, but you know, there are certain situations where if a trap gets spawned, for instance, that is how you grab that stuff and manually put it into the board. So that's useful to know about. So when a scenario is done and you want to clean up, make sure you remove your character minis from the main play area here, because what you are probably going to want to do is go into game setup here and select delete map, which will clear this entire highlighted area and everything in it, so you don't want to accidentally delete your minis. You can get them back, but just try to avoid that. And you can then also go over to monster setup and click delete monsters, and it deletes everything from these areas. And you can see actually that would have deleted my minis, so you want to make sure that they're actually well out of the way, and then click delete monsters. All right, that pretty much does it.